So I'm going to keep this really casual today. So if you like Kelly said, if you have any questions, just raise your hand. Even in the middle of a conversation that we're talking about something, raise your hand, and we're going to keep it just kind of very conversational and less formal than a speaker with a bunch of attendees, because we're all in this together. Just a little background for those of you I don't know really well. I am the executive director of the DC chapter. Prior to that role, I was the event manager at the DC chapter and have been managing events and trade shows for a lot of years. I don't like putting a number on it because it's like 2 decades, and after that I just feel old. So just a long time. Trade shows are my favorite thing in the whole wide world, and so I'm sad at what this is going to do to the industry that I came from and that I love. But at the same time, it's kind of exciting that we get to experiment with new ways of delivering business networking and events. And so I'm trying to stay positive and think about the fun, new, cool stuff and new toys out there that we get to play with. However, I'm sure, like me, you were all trying to find ways to save your events this year. Our revenue budgets are very dependent upon events in DC, and I know that is likely the case for all of you as well. And we have contracts out there that we need to pivot to virtual events, and we have sponsors and exhibitors and attendees who are all depending on us to deliver the networking and education. So what I'm hoping I can do today is give you some tips, some information about how to start that process of taking things from in-person to virtual. And so, right off the bat, we called this webinar Large Events and Trade Shows discussion. And so first I want to talk about the difference between the two. In turning them virtual, it is extremely difficult to do them in the same manner. So large events, you have education events, you have networking events. Large education events are I say simple to turn virtual, but there are a lot of easy ways. We're all sitting right now in Zoom, and you can take a large education event and deliver education via webinar style. You have options for breakouts and general sessions. It may require an upgraded account. For instance, we have an account that was Zoom plus webinar up to 500 people, and so I could have 500 of you in the main room, and I could go assign you to Zoom rooms for breakouts, and then bring you back. So you could spend all day on Zoom, literally, like we are already doing, and do one of those events. I don't see her on the call right now. I know Carice in Southeast Virginia and I talked a couple weeks ago about their Virginia legislative update event, and so that is what they're looking at doing. So you have a general session, and then you can break them out and bring them back together. In terms of expense there, you're looking at the expense of Zoom, which is not too great, and you can use that. You can use it for anything, so it'll spread out through your budget. When you get into things, large events, large networking events, Kelly and I, before we got on the call, were talking about the challenge of, say, an award ceremony. We do our award ceremony in November every year. It's purely networking. It's purely celebrating our volunteers. I could create some great videos. I could get everybody on Zoom. We could all dress up in our own house, and we could all celebrate our amazing volunteers on Zoom. It's not the same thing as being in person. And so, so this takes me to my first real great hard point to make. Not every event that you have scheduled in person can translate to a virtual event. And so the first question you need to ask yourself when you're looking at it is, can I still achieve the event goal virtually? And it is a hard moment when you know in your gut that the answer is no. And it's hard because we all love those events. It is hard because we have sponsors and exhibitors and attendees and members who are waiting and counting on that event. But it is far better to cancel or postpone the event than put it on virtual and not meet the goals of the event for the sponsors, for anybody. And so as you're looking at pivoting, your first question is, does this content translate? Do the goals translate? If the answer is no to either of those questions, I would not proceed in holding the event virtually. I'm looking for questions. So if you have any questions, raise your hands. The second question that you need to ask yourself when you're moving a large event / education event is, how are you going to keep attendees engaged? And that, you know, are you going to, for instance, have everybody muted and just have the speakers on the stage, and this is just what I like to call the talking head that everyone's listening to? Or do you want the active Q&A? Do you want them to have the ability to ask and answer questions? Do you want to have a moderator? So that the method and how you're going to do that is important to decide right up front. The other thing is when you're putting these together, the first people you need to ask, once you've decided that yes, you can translate the content, yes, you can translate the goal, the very next group you need to be involving are your sponsors and your speakers. They need to be part of your planning process, not the afterthought. If you have buy-in from your sponsors, you're going to have to pivot a lot of their benefits. You know, at the DC chapter, Christine, our event manager, I see her on here now. You know, Christine and I have had to take, you know, no, there's no signage at a virtual event. There's no badge ribbons at a virtual event. There's no welcome address really at a virtual event. And so we've had to pivot those things, and we have virtual backgrounds with sponsor logos. And so any staff or the sponsors themselves have virtual backgrounds with logos on them instead of signage. We ask the sponsors to do welcome introductions, or when we have a prize, the sponsor is the one who pulls the prize. So you have to get their buy-in from the very beginning. That has helped us with networking event sponsors. Their entire package year got destroyed by a virus. There's no brewery event, there's no bowling event, there's no winery event. They're gone for the year. So they get happy hours on Zoom, which are not the same thing. They're something, but they're not the same. And so, but by getting them involved at step one, have not received any request for refund of their money. They are happy. They are getting return. And every once in a while, we get the question of how do other companies get involved? So, you know, does the content translate, and then get those speakers and sponsors involved to help you. The education right now, one of the other things, particularly right now, this is so unprecedented in every aspect of what we do, both for our members in the community and for the event side of our lives. The content that we have planned for the rest of the year, some of it translates really well, and we can ask our speakers to put a COVID-19 spin on it, or what has changed about this part of our world now. Some of it people are just not going to, people don't really want to have, you know, we have a really cool session that's hands-on, that you get to go into the boiler rooms and the HVAC systems and see and touch them in a building. Not possible right now. It also doesn't translate. Even when we can do a smaller in-person event later in the year, maybe. People really aren't interested in that right now. That's not what they're going to spend their time trying to learn about. They are now trying to learn about crisis management and health management in their community. And so that content, while still relevant, is not going to be a top driver. And so we'll put that off until later, until things calm down a bit. So those are all content decisions when you're pivoting to virtual. Any questions about education online? You've got to just kind of stay on top of content and act quickly. You know, we in Virginia, Virginia LAC worked with the governor and had an amendment to a bill that says that associations can now meet 100% electronically. We used to have a rule that 2 people in a nonprofit corporation had to be in the same room and everyone else could be electronic, which contradicted our stay-at-home order. So Virginia Lact worked really hard and we got that reversed. And so we very quickly at the chapter have now put together a webinar about how to hold a virtual meeting for community. So you've got to stay on top of the pulse of what's going on and be able to pivot very quickly. So having a platform already like Zoom, I don't know if, is anyone else using anything else besides Zoom in their chapter? I feel like everyone uses Zoom now. Or WebEx is another great one. You know, so be ready to pivot quickly, empower your committees to start moving and get some content driving. All right, so now do you guys want to talk about the big elephant in the room about trade shows? So I'm currently, in my background here, I'm living in the old world back in February, way back when in February, when we squeezed our trade show in. It was literally the week that coronavirus started in this country. It started hitting the news because my staff thought it was hilarious that I was buying all these like soap, like hand soap and hand sanitizer for our staff office on site and walking around with hand sanitizer all the time, convinced people weren't going to get sick. Thank God they didn't. But it was literally the week before. And so we were able to squeeze our trade show out. That being said, we were already looking at 2021 and having to plan our 2021. And like I was telling Kelly, you know, we basically we're going to have 4 plans. We're going to have plan A, B, C, and D. Plan A is my pie in the sky, maybe the ostrich, like stick your head in the sand and pretend like nothing is happening around you. And we're going to go ahead and be able to get our trade show done in person, just like we always have, and everything is going to be just fine. I don't think it's very likely, but there's plan A. Plan B is going to be a hybrid situation where we have in person, but we also have a layer of virtual. Plan C is going to be 100% virtual, and plan D, which I really don't even want to put out in the universe, will be that we don't have anything at all. So plan D is not really a great plan. So how do we do this? Interactive trade shows, when you say I'm going to take a trade show virtual, there is a wide variety of things you can do. So the top of the line, huge virtual trade shows allow exhibitors to build like 3D model, walk through them online booths. It's cool. It's like virtual reality, right? Remember the Sims game? It's almost like Sims, and they build your booth and you have a little like avatar and you get to walk through it and experience the booth. It's amazing. It's really cool. If you've ever experienced it, it's cool. It is difficult to build, it is expensive to build, and it has a large learning curve for the attendee to really truly understand what's going on. So it's not something we would look at doing on that level for those reasons. You can look out there. There are companies who do that. It is a huge investment. And so I'm not going to concentrate on that kind of trade show. You know, what I'm going to concentrate on is a virtual online trade show that allows for attendee and exhibitor interaction with an education layer on top. So I'm just curious, well, most people don't have their video on, but I'm curious how many people still have not done their 2020 trade show. I see Chris, I see Michelle. Cheryl and I see Michelle. Cheryl and I have ours about the same time. It was literally the same day, actually. Cool. So here's a stat for you, just so you, and I think that this stat's probably outdated now because everything that was, you know, every stat last week is now different, right? Because everything changes every day now. But Cisco, who, you know, a big technology company, says that by 2022, 80% of the internet traffic will be video-based. I would be willing to bet that that has moved up to 2021 because we are all living in Zoom land and YouTube land now. So that with that stat, what that tells me is that people are used to video. They're getting used to this. It's not going to be scary for them. And so you can use video now to make this pivot. So the first thing, again, with trade shows is decision. Do you do it? The first thing with trade shows is, what requirements do you have? Do you need live interaction between the exhibitor and the attendee? Do you need appointment setting? So instead of live interaction, where an exhibitor is sitting in a Zoom room waiting for people to attend and having live conversation, do you just need an appointment setting function where the exhibitor puts out their calendar and attendees can make appointments, and then they're off on their own to have those appointments? Do you want a chat function where maybe there's not a Zoom room, but there's an ongoing chat that the exhibitors can have? Is that private chat? Is it open chat where everyone can see that? Do you want your attendees to interact with each other? Do you want them to be able to network with each other and find other people with similar interests or in similar industry or whatever? So the first thing you need to do is determine what you want to happen. I tell Christine a lot, when we talk about events, is event planning is backwards. So you think about, what does it look like in the end? What was the experience of the attendee, of the exhibitor, of the sponsor, and work backwards to get to there. And so if you're working backwards in virtual, what do you want the attendee to be able to do? What do you want the exhibitor to be able to do? What does the exhibitor get out of this? What does the attendee get out of this? And then work backwards. My other favorite thing to do is, I like to ask for everything in my dream world and get the pricing on everything in my dream world. And then I start peeling it back, because then I can start deciding, well, that's just, I really want that, but maybe that isn't quite worth that money. It helps you kind of peel your onion back to your essentials. So once you figure out your requirements, that's when you start looking out at the vendors. And like I said, there's a lot of different companies out there. You can Google search virtual trade show vendor, and there's like 5 pages of them. Just a couple that I am familiar with to throw out there. If you want to see the fancy virtual, kind of sim style virtual reality booth, 2 companies, InExpo and VFairs, are both very large virtual trade show companies. They've been around for a while. Before this virus hit, they didn't pop something up. So it's kind of cool to look for a demo there and see what is possible at that end of the spectrum. There is a company called Map Your Show. And it is a little less, interactive. It doesn't have a lot of interactivity between live interactivity between the attendees and the exhibitors, but it does give searchability for exhibitors by category, by booth. People can set appointments. They can set up times to talk. And then my biggest recommendation is, so how many people have an online registration vendor or have like an online trade show map? So I would start there. So we use a company called Event Rebels, and we are on, I think we're about to sign year like 4 or 5, I guess 5, with them. And with Event Rebels, we have an online floor plan already that you can scroll over and click on an exhibitor's name, and their profile comes up. And we've locked it down pretty hard to just be their contact information, their website. But Event Rebels is opening up now a virtual trade show module by the end of the summer, I've been told. So there's your hot off the press news. They're coding it right now. But what that's going to be able to let us do is add live chat, add appointment setting, add Zoom room meetings, allow exhibitors to upload video. So if you clicked on Bob's pool service, Bob could have uploaded a video, a commercial, say, about his company, or maybe it's the president of the company doing a short presentation of like the top 10 reasons you should pick me as your pool company. And so he could upload that so the attendees have a little more of an experience online. And so there's another company called eShow that I used at a prior association. They, I'm sure, are building another module. But if you have an online registration vendor who's already doing your trade show data and registrations, I would start there. They already know your data. They already know you. They may have something that they can build that they've partnered with. You know, this is a time one. There's a lot of vendors out there looking for this business. I would start with the companies, the vendors that I already work with, already know. I already know what they can do. We already have a relationship. And a lot of these virtual event companies have either just popped up overnight, or they have a lot of longtime clients and their bandwidth for picking up new clients is low. And so you don't want to be the small little guy who comes in now and isn't serviced the way that you need to be. So that's how I would go about that. Any questions? Rachel, I said, can you type these names here? Yes, I will send out all the names of the companies that I just mentioned. And if you want contacts for Event Rebels or eShow, I'm happy to share those as well. All right, before I keep going on and on, do you guys have any questions that you will definitely want me to answer? Anything you're curious about? Oh, Rachel.
Sorry, hi, I apologize if you hear my kid in the background. Hi.
That's right, I just kicked one out.
I just kicked him out again, but I see his little shadow. So do you offer, so you said that none of your exhibitors have pulled out so far. Our event that's scheduled for September and then possibly one in October is a 2-day event. So the booth was like $1,700. And I'm curious whether or not you would suggest making that a 1-day event and like doing a partial refund. I'm just not sure how you approach the exhibitors when it's that much money, or that's a lot for our job, at least.
It is a lot of money. I mean, our booth, our 10 by 10 booth, Christine, you can correct me in chat if I'm wrong, but our 10 by 10 booth is about $2,200. And we're a 1-day expo. So we have 2 days of education and 1 day of expo. So it's hard to answer that. So I actually have a meeting today at 2 o'clock with my president-elect and Christine to talk about just those questions for us next year. My theory here is that you have an opportunity to do more than 2 days, right? So it's a virtual education. So you don't have to do it live, right? You could do it live on Wednesday, but have the video available all week long for people to go back and see. You could have 1 day of live interaction on your virtual trade show, but then have it open all week long. So you could actually spread out the exposure and then just have set live times so that people aren't literally sitting by their computer for a whole week, but maybe they're sitting by their computer, 2 hours every day for a week. So you actually have some opportunity to kind of play with that. I am, those of you who know me personally, I am not a fan of the word refund. I don't do refund. I will, so we're trying to figure out how to handle those, right? So if I charge $2,200 for a 10 by 10 booth for the 2021 show, but then we end up 100% virtual, is the value the same? I could argue it's more, because there's more people, there are people who are just never going to come in person to our show. It's on a Saturday, it's Saturday in downtown DC. So people are not gonna go in the metro. It's February, so people have indoor soccer and basketball games and all these things with their kids, but they would they would have many more opportunity to come virtually because they don't have to be there on Saturday. They can log in on Thursday or Friday. So you may actually get more / different exposure. But there's a perception that it's not the same, right? And so I think one of the things I'm going to recommend that we do for 2021 is stage our payment schedule. And so that the last payment, say, is 25% of the total fee, is not due until maybe 90 days from the event. At that point, we will know if we can go in person or not. Trade shows are not, you can't decide a week ahead that you can't do an in-person trade show. We will know enough at that point. We will know enough in January to know if we can do an in-person in March, which is when our show is next year. And so that way I don't have to physically give the money back. I can just edit the invoice. Does that answer your question? Okay. Hold on, Michelle. Our trade show is coming up in August. Speed dating type format. Got you. Sandy Manic is good for the. So do I think that attendees would stick around for the entire day to listen to each business partner present? No. No, because I think in person they would, right? But at home, like, your kids run in and out of the room, your dog barks, the kitchen's down the hall, right? Like there's more distractions at home, I find, than there are in the office even. And so, and we all get really tired of Zoom. So I really think we keep our education to 1 hour on Zoom. I think maybe you could go to 2 hours if you literally build in some breaks. You know, we talk about, I mean, we did at our networking event last week, we literally had a commercial break. And we used a local taco place to do like a little cooking demonstration. I thought it was great. People could like get up and go get another drink or check on the kids real quick with a commercial break. So, you know, you could probably go, you know, you could probably do 2, maybe even stretch it to 3, but build in breaks in between. And then you've got to, if you're going to do something long like that, you've got to get your speakers, your business partners, to not just sit and stare at their camera and talk. They've got to do something engaging to keep people's attention. You know, play a game, share their screen with a video. They've got to work harder to make an impression on a virtual platform. So I would break it up, you know, instead of having, like I said, that's a perfect opportunity. Instead of having one day, do it over a week, you know, and you know, do a couple every day, and people can, when they register for all of them, and they log in live, they can see it live, you know, or hit the record button and post all the recordings, and then they can see it 3 months down the road when they're like, oh, wait, I need that pool company again. They can go back and look at it. And then in your sponsor and your exhibitor prospectus, you say that not only can they see it live, but it will live on forever in your recordings. Cheryl, will you market the booth sales as in-person or virtual? I'm crafting that language in my head, and we are going to take the very positive spin of, we can't wait to see you in March of 2021. And then we're going to say that we are planning an you know, the trade show, you know, as all have come to know and love it, but that we are watching the local health information, and we'll follow CDC and Virginia, DC, Maryland guidelines on gathering size and such, and that we will. So we're going to acknowledge it. We're going to acknowledge that we are kicking the can on a decision because it's hard. It's 10 months from now. Who knows where we're going to be? And there's not even a way to make a guess on where we're going to be in 10 months. So we're going to say it's in person. We're going to acknowledge that there will be a virtual layer added to it, and that if/when we need to turn 100% virtual, that the exhibitors will be part of the process to do that. And then we will probably have to give them some kind of out if they don't want to do it that way. But part of their deposit will be non-refundable if they make that choice. Because we still have expenses that we have to pay far ahead of time, right? We all pay all these vendors all this money up front, right? So we still have to cover that.
Jamie, there was also a question of ballpark for the different types of virtual events, if you had any of those ballparks for them.
That's really hard. It's all about requirements. As soon as you start adding interactivity, it goes up, you know, exponentially. It really depends on how many booths, what requirements you have. You know, I know, for instance, you know, with Event Rebels, I was really excited when I got a quote on what that module is going to be, because I was like, oh yeah, add that on, no problem. But that's on top of my annual contract with them, right? So they're already handling registration and already handling the virtual floor map. So it's really hard. It's hard for me to say. I mean, it could be those virtual reality kind of booths are up there in the $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 range for shows. You know, so our show has, we have, God, how big is that hall, Christine? It's about 150,000 square foot expo hall or so in DC, and that rental is $29,000 a year. I would, if I turned it 100% virtual with one of the big virtual expo companies, I would expect it to be the same kind of rental, right? Because you're still renting space. So, you know, but I will tell you, the Event Rebels quote was not that much. So, you know, it really depends. I think it's you've got to fill out your requirements, and that drives the price. So, and just think, the more interactive you need or want it to be, the higher the price is going to be. That's where the money, that's where the hard coding, that's, you know, that is custom coding. So if you can take an out of the box situation and make it work, your cost is going to be much lower. Any other questions? Anything?
That was the last question I saw. Does anybody else want to ask a live question before we continue?
Or tell a story, and we can, oh, there's Michelle. I'm going to unmute Michelle.
So like I said, we are supposed to do ours in August. Is there any way that you see we realistically can pull all of this together in 3 months to be beneficial for the attendee and the sponsor, business partner?
If you start now. I think, one, we have the benefit of, we're all in the same boat of, oh my God, what just happened to the world, right? So you have this kind of, you have almost a little bit of pre-forgiveness for acting quickly and not making it perfect, right? And so we need to kind of use that to our advantage. You don't want to do something that harms your event, harms your sponsors, anything like that. But if you say right now, we want to do something in August, right? It's May. We are going to put this up, and it is 85% meeting the requirements. That's probably good enough right now. You know, typically we would want, like, it's going to meet all the requirements. Right now, 85% might be good enough to deliver something. I think you keep it simple, right? So the first time anyone does anything, you should just keep it simple, get to the basics, the essentials. What are the essentials? Getting the exhibitor and sponsor's name in front of attendees, getting the attendees to interact with the exhibitors and the sponsors, and then providing education to the attendee, right? So those are your 4 essentials. So, you know, how can you do that in a virtual environment? And, you know, so sponsors, get them all to make a video. You can stand on your deck with your iPhone and make a video of yourself talking about your company. It doesn't have to be fancy. And I think that's one of the things that, that people forget. We don't need fancy. Sometimes I'd rather have the personal message video than some big production video, right? It seems it's heart to heart. So, you know, have the sponsors send video in, and instead of just logos, maybe it's your commercial breaking between education sessions. in Zoom. So when everyone goes out to their Zoom rooms, they do their education with their speakers, they come back and there's a little commercial break and you're running some videos on sponsors. You know, you need a exhibitor list that people can click on and search. So that, you know, how do you search an exhibit hall? You search by company names because you already know them, or they invited you, right? And you search by category because you go in looking for a restoration company, a paving company. You have your list of people to go to. So you got to have your searchable exhibitor list. And then once they get to the company's name and they click on it, what's the basics that they need to do? They need to know who the company is, what the company does, how to contact the company, right? So, you know, if you had a click here to contact button and it opened up their email and they could set an appointment right away, or there's a really cool app called Calendly. I don't know if you all have it. I use it at work and I love it. It links into your Outlook calendar. And so people, like if you email me at the end of my email signature, it says my calendar is online. You can click that and put an appointment on my calendar without having to do the 27 emails back and forth about what time works for both of us, because my calendar is just on there. And so you could offer a link like that to the exhibitor to say, you know, set some time parameters around you know, meetings, and the attendee could click on that and make an appointment and off they go. I mean, that would be the very basics. You could pull that off between now and August. The challenge is you have all of this operational planning that you have to do, and you also have to market it. And there's an education for the attendee that has to go along with the market, not just, hey, we're going virtual. Okay, that's great. How does it work? You just taught me Zoom. I barely can function in that because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but some of my members have gone over to Zoom and virtual, no problem. And some of them, I'm like, you just click the link. Just click the link. That's all. And this is a foreign place for a lot of people. And so you need to create some marketing education materials, and you have to write it to your least technology advanced member. And so you've got a marketing challenge and you've got an operations planning all at the same time. So this is, again, get your sponsors and exhibitors involved. Let them help you do it. If they feel like they own it and they have a say, they won't ask for a refund. They will be your biggest champions. They will get people there. They will return the next year. You know, a little bit of, can you please help me? You know, because I want to help you goes a long way.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, Cheryl, does the physical trade show book translate to a virtual? Yeah, I want to keep my ad revenue too. We just made our magazine virtual for the time being too, and so now I'm worried about my magazine advertising too. So, you know, yeah, I think it could. Yeah, I mean, you're going to save some money in printing, right? So you don't have to print it. You make it an interactive PDF. You know, if you really got fancy, then the book would, you could click on Cheryl's pool service, and it would. Can you tell that I really want the pools to open because all my examples are random pool companies. You know, if you clicked on Cheryl's pool service in the book, wouldn't it be cool if it linked to your online booth? Right, so you could just automatically go there. That would be cool. Yeah, I think it's a little bit different. I would still like the ad revenue. I quite frankly think online advertising in a book like that is great. I think it lives longer, right? What do you do with a magazine or your conference book, right? You bring it home and about 6 weeks later, you're like, I haven't looked at this since I went to that show. It's in the trash can. Where the online book can be posted for the whole year, right? So make the ads clickable so that when somebody is in the PDF, they can click on that exhibitor's ad and it takes them to their website. That's how our magazine ads are. And then you may even get extra revenue. So with our online magazine, our digital quorum, we have companies, you can buy banners. So like on the it'll just be a banner on the page. It's not in the magazine, it's on the page. And so those are those are in addition to in the magazine, right? But they continue to live on forever. So I call it like bonus ad revenue, because we assume we get zero, but we're starting to get some. So you just kind of think it's got to be a functional. It can't just be a flat PDF. It's got to work. It's got to do something. And a design firm should be able to do that, because they're just embedding links into a PDF, which sounds really easy, but they like to charge a lot for that extra step. I know. Anything else? Any other questions? Any other horror stories that you want some advice on or help? Rachel.
Sorry, my kid's right next to me. Quick
It's okay.
question. Any idea of how to distinguish between, we sold 10 by 10s that were like in a better location and then 10 by 10s in like a basic location?
Mm-hmm.
Any idea how to distinguish? Because I'm like, oh, okay, I love the idea of the PDF ad book. I could give like a full page in the front of the book to like a 10 by 10, and then maybe like towards the back, like the good area of the show, 10 by 10 or something. I don't know. But like, how do you distinguish it when you split the event throughout the week? Like, do the premium 10 by 10 booths get to be with like the higher ranking speakers maybe? Is that how you would kind of do it?
Yeah, you could do that. I was thinking about that this weekend. Like, we do that too. So we have premium location and then standard location. And then we have like, we've got 10 by 10s and we have like 10 by 30s. We have a couple 20 by 20s. Like, we have all these different size booths. And then we have what we call premier sponsors, which are like the 4 best locations on the floor, and they pay even a higher premium. What do we do with them on virtual? You know, and like I said, I don't refund. I don't like giving money back. So, you know, maybe they're getting some extra bonus, right, on the virtual trade show floor. Is there a way on your floor map to put their logo on top of their booth? So as people are scrolling around, the premium people have their logo showing. Can you make them a different color so they stand out? Like, so if all the booths are green, but the premiums are yellow, you know, they stand out a little bit. You know, do you give them in the online book, you know, do you give them, assuming they all have an ad or whatever, maybe you put like a big star next to them to show that they are premium, so they're getting a little extra attention. You could highlight them. You could give, maybe you know, you're going to need somebody to introduce a speaker, even on a virtual education. So maybe they do the speaker introduction in the education session. Maybe they're the ones that have a little commercial between things. So you just have to think about what extra stuff you could do. And my favorite thing is to think of extra stuff that doesn't cost me a lot of money, but looks really cool, like a commercial, right? You know, and the commercial is like 15 seconds, you know, it's not a presentation, like a 15-second commercial. You know, and have, you know, have it sent in to you, and then you'll have it for, you know, for other things later on. Cheryl, any statistics on percentage of exhibitors who will move to virtual? Wondering how to budget. Me too. Me too. I am too. No, I mean, you could go out into like the, you know, the whole event world and find statistics about that. Looking at my particular exhibitor list at our chapter, I think we will budget. So generally speaking, the event world thinks that events will be down in registration. This is for the next 18 months to 3 years by about 30%. So you can just assume 30% of your attendees not coming to a large event in person. I think that's low, especially for the first 18 months. So we're going to budget that 40%. We have a 40% drop off across the board, and then I hope I'm really pleasantly surprised that we only have a 30% drop off, because that would be great. But we're gonna go with 40%. Don't come back. And then we're toying. I'm going to toy with And I'm sure like Christine's probably like jotting all these notes down because our conference conversation's at 2:00 today. So she's probably like, crap, she's been thinking all weekend and she's like jotting all these notes down. You know, do you offer an exhibitor up front? Because I'm pretty confident that we're going to have hybrid events for the next several years, that all events will have to be hybrid. So do you offer up front to the exhibitor? Do you want an inline booth, you know, an in-person booth that automatically gets you a virtual booth, or do you want it to be virtual only? And have different price points for that. I don't know. You know, the other thing Christine came up the other day is if we are able to have it in person next year, social distancing is still going to be around because now our human behavior has changed and that is going to be the norm. And so you can't have 2 exhibitor reps in a 10x10 booth that share a sidewall and then 2 people in the next 10x10 booth that share another sidewall and say you're social distancing, right? That doesn't work anymore. So now we're going to do a 10x10 booth and put, say, 3 feet between that booth and the next booth. But in a row, now I'm going to lose at least 2 booths in a row. So now I got to redo my whole floor plan that we've come to like over the last 3 years. Or am I going to lose enough exhibitors because they don't have the money for this anymore that it balances out and everything's going to be just fine? You know, coffee carts, food, what do we do now? I mean, my attendees love to complain about the box lunches, but guess what? They're getting box lunches for the next however many years we exist. So, you know, I'm hopeful that the catering companies realize that box lunches are now a thing, like a cool thing, the only thing, and they step the game up a little bit. But, you know, so how do we handle that? I mean, I can't imagine walking through a trade show, picking up all the logo tchotchkes, shaking hands, you know, that's all gonna be different. So, Michelle, I see you have a question about event apps.
Yeah. First, I want to thank you for taking me out of the pie in the sky because I've really been there. I'm wanting to have my events still, and I know I have to be realistic. But anyway, do you use apps, or we can ask all the group, apps for your events? And I ask because EventMobi is who we use. And last week I was contacted by them about them having a virtual platform now. And, right. You know, being brand new at that, it makes me a little nervous, but I'm just wondering if anybody else is looking into that route.
So it's funny. So Event Rebels is going the opposite direction, right? So Event Rebels, our registration company, has a mobile app, right, that ties into my registration, and we use it for conference. We've used the app. So what they realized was that, quite frankly, what they've done in their app, right, is basically a virtual trade show, right? Because in the app you can set appointments, you can search attendees, you can create your must see these exhibitor list. So all the functions you're doing in the app is pretty much a virtual trade show.
Okay.
You need a couple other things, right? But the basics are there. So all these apps are just taking their app and making them desktop instead of device based. Mm-hmm. So that might be the first place you start, is with them, because they already have your data. They already know what you're doing. So then it would be, okay, what's different about the desktop version, right? Otherwise you could just have an app show.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And then ask them how much more they're going to charge you.
Yeah, for sure. Right. A lot probably.
Yeah. And that's, and do you get a package? So then there's a whole pricing conversation. Do you get a package deal where you pay them one fee and you get all these things? Or do you get all these things and you only get charged for however many booths you have? So it's, I'm just gonna throw a number out, you know, $75 a booth and you get these things and you get billed for however many booths you have. Or are you gonna pay $5,000 and get all of this included? There'd probably be a cap of, like, you know, for 5,000, you're going to get X number of booths, and over that, you're going to have this. Budgeting right now, because none of us have any idea of how many people are going to go virtual with a booth. I would push hard to do a per booth contract, right? Because then you're only paying for the number of booths you're getting to sign up, You're not going to leave a ton of money on the table. If you say, I'm going to get 100 booths and then 60 come in, you're out 40 booths. Or do a package for much less than you anticipate and then ask them for a per booth above that, or the ability to increase. It would be super conservative in this first year. So that, Cheryl, that's a little bit of budgeting, super conservative. I mean, we're taking, you know, my president-elect very clearly said to me last week, if when you're planning conference 2021, you think, oh, I love doing this thing, it's really nice to have. Like this year we had this cool, like, I don't know how big tall it was like 8 feet tall, and it said 2020, and it hung from the ceiling above our chapter booth, and it's really cool. Now we saved it, so I don't have to buy it again. But that was just a nicety to have. It wasn't essential to the show. All things that are nice to have are going to be cut next year. So it is going to, we are going back to the basics. That might just be our theme for the year, who knows? Back to the basics, essentials, because we don't know what the revenue side of this is gonna look like. And so we're gonna strip down everything. Because I know that for us, our conference, our trade show is the biggest, you know, one-day revenue producer for our chapter all year long, and we call it the cannot fail. Any other questions? I could talk events all day long. So any question you have about events, I think that the hardest part is that nobody knows what's happening. Nobody knows how hotels and convention centers and event venues are going to handle social distancing and cleanliness and how they're going to open. You know, so this is going to be around for a long time in the event world. We were the event industry was the first industry to be hit the hardest, right? So no more events, and it's probably going to be the last to recover. And I don't think it'll ever look the same. So we have to be creative and still try to give our attendees what they need. You know, so again, back to the basics, the education and the networking.
If you think of any other questions, again, feel free to use the exchange to send that out so that that communication can keep going. But otherwise, you know, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Jamie, for doing this and running this for us. And I hope you guys all have a great Monday.
Thank you, guys. You can call us anytime. Happy to help. Bye.